Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. So welcome to this Q&A for the Without Walls Open Call for 2026. My name is Irene Segura. I am Head of Artists and International at Without Walls. I am a white Catalan woman in my late 30s with olive skin, dark hair, which is tied back. And today I'm wearing a pink shirt, a black blazer, and yellow flowery earrings. Together with my colleagues, I look after our artistic programs, which includes our research and development strand Blueprint, as well as our creation and touring program, which we will be talking about in a moment. Today, we will be answering questions about the open call for the 2026 Without Walls program, which is an opportunity for artists to make and tour new outdoor work. I will be facilitating the discussion, and I am absolutely delighted to be joined by several panelists from across our networks and some of the artists that we have commissioned and collaborated with in recent years. So firstly, it's great to be joined by Clive Lyttle from Certain Blacks, who runs Ensemble Festival, and Parmjit Sagoo from Inspirate, who runs an Indian summer in Leicester. We're also lucky to have here two brilliant supported artists, London-based Sonia Sabri and Ryan Murphy from Circus company Tit for Tat. They'll be sharing their experiences of going through the creation and touring of new outdoor shows with you all. So firstly, I just wanted to say a big thank you for making the time to be here today, especially as it's the middle of the touring season and the run up to your festival. So we really, really appreciate your time. Thank you. So I will ask the speakers to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their events and projects in a moment. But before, I just wanted to also say that we're pleased to be joined by Kirstie and Lydia, who are providing BSL interpretation. Thank you. And also by Kate, who is running the live captioning. My colleague Grace, who's program manager at Without Walls, is also here in the background, and she'll be popping in any necessary links in the chat. If you have any technical issues, you can also send her a message in the chat. So before we start, just to say that the session is for you all. So I would encourage you to write your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screens, and we'll answer the questions as we go along. We have a fair amount of time ahead of us, so hopefully we'll be able to answer all the questions. Finally, the session is being recorded and will be shared on YouTube channels and on the website afterwards, so you can come back to it if needed. Okay, now that's out of the way, I'd like to start by asking our panelists to introduce themselves. So Parmjit, would you like to kick us off?
Sure, I'll start off by describing myself. So I am an Indian Punjabi woman. I have dark hair that is just underneath my chin, and I'm wearing glasses and a bright green t-shirt. So I'm the executive producer of Inspirate, we do a year-long programme of creative projects, indoors and outdoors, some of which reach community, some of which are about artist development. And we also have a flagship festival that happens annually currently called an Indian Summer. We're due to go through a massive name change over the next year after this year's festival is done. My own experience of working outdoors spans over 20 years, working as a sort of movement theatre artist, yoga specialist, keen walker. I have my own practice that delves into those areas, but also have been doing a lot of co-creation work with communities to make work outdoors as well. So that's my own practice as an artist. As Inspirate, like I say, we work indoors and outdoors, but increasingly we are beginning to work and focus much more on our outdoor work. So our festival is at the moment indoors and outdoors, but I think that's going to change dramatically over the next few years as we start to really develop our outdoor programme. So this year we have our biggest outdoor programme, if you look at previous years. So we also are touring a show called Ancient Giants, which was part of the creation and touring programme with Without Walls, supported by them last year. And we're now in our second year of touring and going to 7 festivals this year. So that's super exciting. As Inspirate, we're a South Asian-led organisation, a diverse-led organisation. So a lot of our work centres upon platforming, nurturing South Asian artists and artistry. We're about contemporary South Asian arts. So that is very much looking at diaspora generations and looking at that blend of heritage, ancestry, roots, and the experiences of growing up in this country, in the UK, and what that mix, and I call this the creative alchemy, that involves being in those in-between spaces, what that creates artistically, politically, spiritually, philosophically. So we're very, very interested in what comes out of that, what is coming out of that, and then informing our projects and informing the festival and what happens in all those programs and events and activities.
Thank you so much, Parmjit. And do you mind also telling everyone a little bit about your journey in the network of Without Walls?
Yeah, so we've had quite a journey over the last 2 years, I think, maybe longer now. We started off as part of the Creative Development Network, is that right, CDN? And then we went through the process of applying for Blueprint, and then the creation and touring grants, so in order to tour Ancient Giants. And then along the way, we became involved in the Artistic Directorate. So we've been involved in many different levels and layers throughout the last couple of years, especially. But now, yeah, we sit on the Artistic Directorate, which is super exciting.
That's great. Thank you so much, Parmjit. So yeah, lots of different perspectives there to contribute to the conversation, which is brilliant. Thank you for that. Clive, would you like to go next? I think you're on mute, Clive.
Hi, yeah, I'm Clive Lyttle. Sorry about that. I'm Artistic Director of Certain Blacks, and we are an Arts Council funded MPO, fairly recent MPO. We produce 2 festivals a year: Ensemble Festival, which is the outdoor festival, and then we produce an indoor festival, which this year was called Afro Futures. Next year it's going to be called Black Athena. Those are our 2 major outputs, but we also support artists, and we invest in artists in their own right and do small commissions with artists, etc. I've been working in the outdoors for quite a while. It must be like 25, 30 years. My first big outdoor festival was Nuamela, which was at the time one of the biggest Melas in Europe. It's no longer around. I really miss it. So I've got a background working in the Asian Melas and art, but also diverse work. So my background is I've worked with a lot of street arts, carnival. I spent 17 years at Arts Council England, where I led on outdoor arts, circus, and a little bit carnival. So I've got experience from there. My training, I trained with a guy called Baz Kershaw, and I mention this now because he wrote a book called Engineers of the Imagination. And they were a welfare state, so I suppose we're like 3rd generation, 4th generation influenced by welfare state. At the time, I sort of fought back, but now I'm really embracing that experience and finding out how that is really good tradition that we've got in the UK of outdoor arts with sometimes a political edge, and reaching communities through doing performance and arts. We're based in East London, in Royal Victoria Docks, which is Ensemble happens around near where I actually live and work. And our journey, oops, there's something happened there. We're still going. And Certain Blacks' journey to being part of Without Walls Artistic Directorate is we only did indoor festivals until 2019, where we got asked to do an outdoor, the first ensemble festival in the Royal Docks. We followed that in 2020 by doing an online festival because we had COVID, and through that online festival sort of raised the awareness that Certain Blacks did outdoor arts. So we were approached to apply for the Artistic Directorate, and we became an Artistic Directorate member in like 2020, 2021. And we did our first ensemble festival with Without Walls post-COVID, so it's a very different world. And I remember dragging big vials of hand sanitizers around that we had on site. So that was our first one. So we've been part of the artistic director since then. So that's amazing. And I don't know if I describe myself, black man with a really cool art ensemble of Chicago t-shirt.
That's great, Clive. Thank you so much. We lost your image for a little bit there.
Yeah, no, I saw it. Yeah.
You're back now. You're back. Thank you for that. That's great. And yeah, what a baptism of fire when you joined Without Walls was COVID. So thank you for sharing that. That's really useful feedback and kind of background. And I guess I just wanted to say that the reason Parmjit and Clive are both here is because, as Parmjit mentioned, and Clive as well, they are two of the festival programmers, and they make up a group of festivals in the network that we call the Artistic Directorate Network. So they are the ones responsible for reading and selecting the proposals that we receive as part of the open call. And basically that makes the selection and programming of the work that comes out from all of the proposals that you'll be putting in. So that's kind of why they're here, and a little bit of the role of that network, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. Brilliant, thank you. So from there, I'd like to move on to introducing Ryan and Sonia. Ryan, would you like to tell us about yourself and the project you've had supported through Without Walls?
Hello, yeah, my name's Ryan. I am a juggler and circus theatre artist. I run a company called Tit for Tat Circus. We make circus theatre shows, typically with lots of stuff catching on fire and things going wrong. We work both indoors and outdoors, but the majority of our work is outdoors because we really like the audiences. We've been working in the outdoor arts for just over 10 years, I think. Our first show was called The Most Dangerous Cup of Tea in the World, and was born from like our cabaret juggling duo at the time. And then more recently, we've been touring a show called Books, which is about some crazy library enthusiasts getting dangerously immersed in reading. And most recently, through Without Walls, I've been touring my first solo show, which is called Now I Am Become Death, Destroyer of Words. I didn't describe myself. I am a Caucasian man with scarecrowy straw hair, wearing a grey t-shirt, about 30 years of age, 34. The show's really personal to me. I was born with a degenerative hearing loss, same with my sister. And the show is not about deaf culture, and it's not about it's not a commentary on my life or my experiences, but it is a celebration of my identity as a deaf person, and finding new ways to communicate with audiences live and in the moment, told through juggling and comedy and theatre and balancing on ladders. That's the show in a nutshell. Sorry, Irene, did you ask, what else did you ask me? Sorry.
I was wondering if also, because I know that you might want to tell us a little bit more about, also you have a space that supports artists.
Oh, that's a very new thing. Yeah. So I'm based in Bristol, and we've just taken on the management of what was the Desperate Men space. They're a very old street theatre company that have been going for 40 odd years. And we've just started managing their studio and an adjacent creation space, which has got much higher ceilings, which is really good for what we do, which is circus and stuff like that. And we are super interested in connecting with people making work, because we want to support particularly the outdoor arts. We'd really like to support the misfits and emerging new work to get out there.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ryan. And thank you also for sharing your process as well for your show, which is kind of, aligned really well with our personal story and your own sort of circus and storytelling style, really true to your own kind of, tit for tat style. So that's brilliant. Thank you. Sonia, could you tell us about the work that you have been doing and how things are going with Mughal miniatures?
Hello everyone, I'm Sonia Sabri and I'm a dance artist, independent dance artist, choreographer, movement director, and also the artistic director of Sonia Sabri Company. I am Asian with long black hair and I have a maroon and grey patterned shawl over my shoulders. And I'm delighted to be part of this webinar. Sonia Sabri Company is a new supported company of Without Walls, and we have really enjoyed being part of the network. The type of work that we do is dance and live music stemming from South Asian traditions, and we have historically done performances in theatres, indoor theatres, touring UK and internationally, some of the largest and most prestigious festivals all over. And as a child artist, I would say I started performing since I was 14 professionally and touring internationally. And as an artist from such a young age, have been performing outdoors. But I would say as a company, we have dabbled in outdoor work for the last, I would say, 10, 15 years. A lot of the work that we traditionally did were adaptations of indoor theatre shows and then reinvented for the outdoors. But about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, just at the back end of COVID, we decided to dedicate some ideas that we've been working on for the last 5-6 years, which was to bring Indian miniature paintings to life. And these Indian miniature paintings go way back to 12th, 13th century, and even further back to countries which no longer exist, like Persia, where these very tiny paintings, which are no bigger than a stamp, no bigger than my thumb, were very intricate and painted with either a horse's eyelash or a camel eyelash, depicting the beautiful world that we dream about, we imagine, we romance about. But of course, behind those pictures lies sometimes very dark, bleak stories. It's a bit like Instagram of today. So not everything that is visible is what it is. It is not necessarily the truth. So Mughal Miniatures was a project that we had thought about many moons ago, but quite dedicatingly the last 5-6 years. And we have had this idea. We had gone to lots of commissioners previously, we had gone to lots of funders previously, always got shortlisted to the last 2 or 3 candidates. One even said that the idea was completely bonkers and got rejected. But with the graciousness of Without Walls, who believed in the idea, who trusted this very interesting concept, which brings our South Asian dance, contemporary dance, acrobatics, live music, puppetry, masks, all together, making a wonderful, vibrant, moving, poignant conversation, a visual conversation that resonates stories of the everyday. So these scenes, as I would say, they are episodes or they are kind of thematic paintings that have been brought to life. So these are life-size images, including frames, very beautiful, ornate, decorative frames, picture frames, which then come through the characters of these paintings. And they're quite They're quite quirky, they're quite cheeky, they're quite mischievous. Nothing like they are when they are well behaved in those pictures. And the stories that we bring to life are actually stories from people that I personally, with my creative team, go out and survey. We speak to people from neighborhoods, from communities that don't have a voice, from people who don't even access the arts or don't have any knowledge of festivals that are for them or can be for them, art forms that they have never heard of. And it's asking them about what is their world like, and how do they interpret the world that they see through different lenses, which is probably media or the news or their next door neighbors, who are very isolated or prefer to stay in communities that they feel safe within. So those stories are then readapted in a Mughal characteral, environmental style. And what we find is that the connection we have with the audiences are profound, because it's a story about them, yet they're depicted through characters that they probably have never seen. And what we are also doing from this particular production, because we are meeting people of all walks of life through the very notion of being in an outdoor festival, we are coming across communities who would never step into a theatre, who would never think about watching dance, who would never think about bringing artists of all different cultures and backgrounds and experiences and disciplines in one space. And we find that there's a human connection. We have a universal thought. We have the same ambitions, desires, dreams, but we don't hear about them. And we have also discovered that there are many families, many people in the UK who come from a Mughal dynasty. But because of their name and because of the way history has maybe portrayed certain dynasties over time, they feel embarrassed or want to shy away from accepting that they are from a community, a dynasty, a legacy that actually has informed what we know as contemporary arts, whether that's visual paintings, whether that's music, whether that's dance, whether that's architecture. So we have actually rediscovered those families and continue to. And we have inspired many to take up dance or to take up theatre or to even just be curious about a history that is not being spoken about. We are re-educating thousands and thousands of people about history that has been purposely shunned to one side. And I'm so grateful to Without Walls that this concept is so alive. We are touring massively with the shows, and the feedback that we're getting is just so rewarding as artists. End of the day, yes, we do it for ourselves, but you know, deep down, we want to move audiences. We want to have that connection with audiences. And I think this has been such a highlight of my work as an artist, but also for the company, that we are able to connect and share our art form to people we would never have reached, but just by doing indoor touring. So I'm really feel very blessed that Without Walls had finally, after 5 years of struggling, actually believed in the idea, and here we are. We're very proud of our work going forward.
Thank you so much, Sonia. That's really, really great to hear. And I think all the audiences and us as an organization are also really thrilled to be supporting amazing work like yours and Ryan's. So thank you for that. I think there's a lot to unpick in there, and it's brilliant that you've kind of gone through that transition of indoors to outdoors and how you've shared your creative process. I think there's a few things there that would be useful for us to perhaps unpick a little bit more a little bit later. And then lastly, when you were talking about the audiences, that's a really important point, I think, for everybody here to kind of just consider when you're thinking about putting a proposal is to consider that breadth of diversity of the audiences that you will be putting your show in front of. So definitely some really great pointers there from all of you. Thank you for that. So for the next part of the discussion, I'm just going to take a few minutes to provide just a little bit of framing and context around what Without Walls is, how we operate, and the kind of work that we're interested in supporting. So bear with me, I will be short, I promise. So Without Walls has existed since 2007. We are a network of over 30 outdoor arts festivals spread all across England. And the types of events and festivals that we work with take place in a whole variety of different locations, really. So some of them happen in town squares or high streets. Some take place in gardens or public parks, in the grounds of stately homes, or in coastal locations. Without Walls is made of 3 different networks of festivals, but the one that we're mostly going to focus on today is the Artistic Directorate, which is the network that Clive and Parmjit are part of. So this is the group that works with us to collaboratively commission all the projects that we support. And this actually is a really big difference between Without Walls and a lot of other funding opportunities that might be out there. For example, the Arts Council National Lottery project grants. Because when you submit a proposal to Without Walls, what you're applying for is not just to receive cash funding to create your work, but it's also the opportunity to be commissioned by these festivals and to then present the work at their events. So that's been a very fruitful and kind of collaborative way of working over the years. And what it does is it enables supported artists to build relationships with the festivals and the artistic directors of the festivals that you're going to be touring to as well. So the opportunity that we're running at the moment is the open call for new work to be presented and premiered in 2026. So that's next summer. To be eligible, you need to be working towards the creation of a new piece of specifically outdoor work, which needs to be available for touring between May and September 2026. So that's the period when our various artistic directorate festivals run for, and that's the standard touring season for outdoor work in this country, really. Your project needs to be led by UK-based artists, and basically that's because we are funded by the Arts Council of England, and our mission and purpose is to support the creation of some of the best new outdoor work being made and presented in the UK. That doesn't mean that if you're not England-based as an artist, you cannot apply. You definitely can, as the festivals are touring in England, and we have supported companies from Wales and Scotland in the past, for example. It does mean that Without Walls is a very competitive program. We usually receive between 100 and 130 proposals, 150 sometimes, and we're only able to support approximately 10% of those. So the success rate is quite small. You can find a little snapshot of last year's open call on our website if you're curious to kind of have a little bit more information as to what the statistics are or how the makeup of that program came about. Perhaps, Grace, you could pop the link in the chat if you don't mind. It's also worth mentioning that you can either apply to the call for the creation and touring of a new outdoor show or for touring support only. And this is something that artists miss sometimes. So the touring support only is for outdoor shows that have been already created but haven't toured extensively yet. So what you're applying for is to tour your show to some of the festivals, but there's no financial request attached to that. So you can apply to either of those 2 modalities. Great. So before we move on to questions, just to highlight that Without Walls is not solely a means of financially supporting the creation of new work, but we are actually commissioning an entire artistic program. What that means is that when we are looking at selecting that yearly program, we're not just looking at each individual proposal that we see on its own merits, but we're also looking at what combination of those proposals would make up the strongest and broadest, most representative program that we can present in any given year. So that's quite a crucial difference there. I think that's probably as much as I will say at the moment in terms of the background. And I can see there's a couple of questions already in the chat, so we'll move on to those. There was a first question looking at whether most of our outdoor work stays in one place, for example, like a town square, or whether we have space for promenade shows. I'm going to click answer live. And I wonder if maybe Clive and Parmjit, you'd like to start answering that question, given what you're presenting this year.
Yeah, we do work which is Promenade. The one that I'd highlight that we did last year was Chad Taylor, which was a really good show. It's a headphone show. I think it's called Closer to My Dreams, but I can't remember properly. But it was a headphone show, and it took the audience around part of the docks. So we've done a couple of shows. We've done one with Tara Arts, which was called Final Farewell, which was a map-based trip round to the docks to different locations. And we've worked with, I think almost every year, we probably have at least one or two things which have got a little bit of promenade in it. So it's something we've done on a regular basis.
Parmjit, do you have any advice for artists who are wanting to apply with a show that has that kind of processional element? I know also with your experience with Ancient Giants, I'm sure you'll have some interesting advice.
Yeah, so in terms of an Indian summer festival, there's a real mixture of things going on this year, from promenade to walkabout to performances that are in set places. It all depends on the site that you're in and how much that can accommodate as well. There's one show, Roots to Rise, which actually we're working across 2 outdoor sites, and for one site it is possible for it to be promenade, but for the other site it needs to be adapted to be static, which is something that the artist is happy to do and go through that process, because they're keen to have a static version and a promenade version of their show as well. So that's been an ongoing conversation. But you know, it's really an artistic choice. You don't have to do both. You can say you want your show to be promenade, and that's something you work on festivals with. In terms of experience with Ancient Giants, it's a mix actually. There's a sort of 20-minute walkabout that is very responsive to wherever we are. So whether that if we're in town centres or in gardens or on streets, wherever we are, these are 10-foot tall puppets and very wide as well, and operated by 3 people. So the only considerations that we have to make is the routes that we're walking, where we're going, are able to accommodate that size of puppetry really. It involves a lot of talking very carefully to festivals about routes, about mapping out walks. Occasionally there's a site visit for myself or the touring producer that works on this at Inspirate, or things are done online. So there's quite a lot of prep that needs to happen to make sure those walkabouts can happen safely and also interesting artistically in terms of what they offer for us and the puppeteers, in terms of the interactions we can have with the public and the interactions that we can have with the architectural spaces. And then on top of that, we have to then look at the routes ending in somewhere where we can do a static, the static part of the show, the performance part of the show. So having an area big enough. So there's quite a lot of logistics that you have to go into, but it is definitely possible. Just a lot of communication with the festivals that you're going to. Does that answer the question?
I think that's great. Thank you, Parmjit. I think I would just add also that when you're thinking about your show, it's also really important to kind of just really consider why it has to be of that nature. So why is it important for you and for your artistic idea that the show travels? And what sort of interactions do you want that to create? What does it do to the storytelling? So it kind of really goes together rather than just going, and I'm going to make this idea.
Absolutely. Yeah. It may be that you go through a process where you have this desire for a piece to travel, but if it doesn't mean anything, if it doesn't do anything for the piece, then you have to make careful artistic decisions around that. It may feel nice to get people to travel through space, but if it's not moving your narrative on, then look at other options as well. And for us, in terms of Ancient Giants, the walkabout is just a part of us engaging with audiences and giving people that close up, that feeling of being close up to these puppets and interacting with them, and the informality of having selfies and the joy and sort of fun, playfulness that comes out of those walkabouts. And then there's the kind of contrast of those puppets going into this encounter with each other. So there's where it shifts in atmosphere and invites a bigger audience to come and watch the visual spectacle of it, really. So for us, that was the part of the artistic process, really.
That's great. Thank you very much. That's really, really useful to hear. There's a question in the Q&A. So the question is, can you elaborate on how much you would expect research and development to be already done on a project before coming into the application? And I'm going to ask you, Ryan, and Sonia to kind of talk on that point, but just to say, as a starting point, that the creation period is usually quite short. So it's usually between October and May. So what we're kind of saying is that, and what we have noticed is that it is usually beneficial for projects to have undergone some sort of research and development. It's definitely not mandatory, and we have definitely kind of every year we do support artists and shows that haven't really kind of undergone a lot of a kind of intensive period of research and development. But we have seen that if you have a kind of semi-developed idea, or you've already kind of started asking yourself certain questions, then you're likely to put in a stronger proposal, because you will have started to find out the kind of solutions for those. So just to kick off that bit of the conversation, Sonia, Ryan, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I think, just correct me if I'm wrong, with the two strands of the blueprint, right? And then the creation and touring is the second strand. Is that right? Yeah.
That's right.
So I just applied for the creation and touring. I didn't do the blueprint with this project. But my application did have, we had done prior research on the idea through different projects. So I've been exploring degenerative deafness and people's experiences with hearing loss, and in a completely separate project. And I drew on a lot of that and mentioned that in my application. And then on a mechanical level, I'm doing a whole circus bit with these telescopic ladders that are 2 ladders either side of me. And you sort of build one to climb the other, and you climb up it like a starfish. I've done like several years of research on that with various shows that they nearly made it into, and then we cut them because we didn't have time. So whilst I didn't apply for R&D specific funding for this show, Now I Am Become Deaf, I was drawing on quite a bit of various research done in little pockets over the years, and I only applied to the creation and touring, which I think was about 5 weeks of creating in a space before taking it to Norfolk and Norwich for its first outing.
Thank you, Ryan. Is there anything you wanted to contribute to that, Sonia?
Yes, so we had done little research before the application, but we had done research with children and families who came into library spaces, and looked at movement with them and stories that they felt resonated with them, and we looked at lots of visuals. And so what we collated with that was then the premise of what we then used the creation and touring application for, which was the further stage of R&D. So that was kind of phase 2 of R&D. Phase 1 was outside of the the funding, and then after 1 week of R&D, we did 4 weeks of creation. I know there is a question also asking that how long is a creation period. I think that really depends on what how far you are with your research and how developed you think you are with your ideas, and is it mainly about devising and developing what you've got. But I would say 4 weeks is kind of a good time, depending also how challenging your pieces are. And if you have an R&D, if you have a rehearsal director, if you have other creative team members, I think that also does define how much time you need. Sometimes you may need less, sometimes you might need more, but also that's depending on how much you're applying for and how many people are in your team, how much does the space cost, all of those things.
Yeah, thank you. That's great advice. I can see there's a few questions coming in the chat and in the Q&A, so I am keeping an eye on them. Bear with us as we answer them all. So Ali, you were asking about applying for touring only, and saying if there's no financial requests, the arrangement, the financial request for each festival presentation is done separately with the individual festival and the company. So first, that question. So if you're applying for touring support only, we would still ask you to tell us what your presentation fees would be. So as part of our kind of calculations of the overall program, we need to see how much money the companies are applying for in terms of creation, and then how much the piece will cost to present. So you would still need to give us that information in terms of how much your piece would cost to present, to kind of program as part of the festival, but you would put a 0 in the kind of creation request line, if that makes sense. You have a second question there, which is, we have a piece of work that we piloted once and would like to develop further, which could potentially be done in situ. Would we apply for creation and touring or not? Yes, you certainly can apply for creation and touring. What we're saying is that if you have a piece of work that you have kind of already done a bit of testing for, including some testing performances, then that's absolutely eligible. In fact, you know, we definitely see that sometimes where artists will kind of create a show and then have a bit of a trial performance or a test performance or some kind of open sharings. That's absolutely fine. I think what we wouldn't support is a show that has already been created and has already toured widely. So we're saying if it's been to kind of more than 4 festivals, more or less, then we would consider that that's already had a first tour and it wouldn't necessarily be eligible for touring support, but anything underneath that, below that, would be absolutely fine. So hopefully that answers the question. Brilliant. There's a couple more questions. So there's one question from Layla, apologies if I'm not pronouncing it right, which says, what about variations? For example, a show on an aerial rig or on trees, depending on the site. Are festivals keen to look at possibilities? Do you want to take that one, Clive?
Hi, Leila. Hope you're well. Yeah, we'll look at all sorts of possibilities, but it's got to make sense. You know, if you're going to do a bit on trapeze and then do a bit of promenade, there has to be some sense around it, and it has to have an idea of working and becoming realistic. So we've had ideas which have been quite adventurous in using more than one space or more than one rig, and then the reality works out that it wasn't possible. So you need to make it so it's based in realism. If you're doing stuff up the trees, you need to sort of have an idea of what the festivals are like as well. So don't just assume that every festival's got loads of trees in or got loads of sites to put up rigging and stuff. So, you know, sometimes if you think you've got a more complex idea, it's always good to visit the festivals. You can always talk to the festivals as well and say, look, do you think this will work in your footprint? Not discouraging anything, but I'd say have it practical. So it's the same thing as a promenade thing. Is there a point to doing it in 2 sites and mixing out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing also that I would add to that is that the touring element of the piece is really important for Without Walls, because basically we're a touring network. So what we are supporting is shows that can go to different locations, and you can certainly adapt, but exactly like Clive was saying, you kind of really need to make sure that you're not making assumptions. So for example, if you're basing your show on the fact that there will be an ancient tree, that's probably not going to be a kind of touring show, or not as easy to tour. It'll be more site specific in that respect. So really the nature of the shows needs to be kind of able to tour widely into a variety of festivals. Brilliant. Thank you for that. So Jackie asked a question, is it possible to apply for both blueprint and creation and touring? Yes, the blueprint call out has already closed for this year. So if you were to apply to blueprint, which is our research and development strand, you would need to wait until next year. But you certainly could apply to this round, and then if your idea fits more a kind of earlier R&D stage, then you could reapply for blueprint next year if you wanted to. But currently the blueprint application is closed. We've just finished that call up, so it will reopen next year. I can also see that Josh had a question around the length of the R&D, and Ryan has very kindly replied in the chat. So we'll kind of leave that one there. Thank you. There's a follow-up question from Flick, Ferdinando. around the trees. So the question is, in terms of trees, there are other aspects involved, like tree offices needing to be involved, also kind of tree and how the weather has been in terms of stress on the trees. So it'd be quite involved and long lead in. So that's more advice on that kind of adaptability of the piece. Great. So next question is from Laila. What is the percentage of funds for blueprint versus creation and touring? That's a really good question. So for blueprints, which is the kind of research and development strand, we have an upper limit of £10,000. So you could apply to up to £10,000. And that's really for a period of research and development. Whereas for creation and touring, we're a little bit more open. So it really depends on what that creation looks like, on the size of the show that you're creating and the kind of size of audience that you're going to be performing to. Most of the awards that we have granted in the past sort of 2 to 3 years have been in the region of between 20 and 30,000, more or less. Larger scale work has come in at 60,000, which is our upper limit. So there's quite a difference between the blueprint and the creation and touring support in terms of those funds. I hope that answers that. Great. There's a couple more questions coming in, so just bear with me as I navigate through them. So we have that. I think we are good actually with where we're responding. That's great. Okay, great. So I'm going to ask a question as we wait for other people to ask more questions and have more thoughts, which is about that transition from performing indoors and performing outdoors. And what are some of the things that you need to bear in mind when you're putting in an application or when you're working out that proposal that would be different for an outdoor performance than if you were kind of putting it in for an indoor one? Sonia and Ryan, I'll come to you first.
Yes, so it's very different. The indoor space theatre is controlled environment, and you have facilities that will enhance your performance, lighting, sound, flooring. There is an etiquette to how the audience comes into the space and how they exit the space. There's an etiquette to the performers who enter the space and exit the space or not exit the space. And there is a commitment both from the audience and from, I guess, the venue, or I would say the management on the day of your performance or the evening of your performance in a theatre space, so to speak. So there is kind of, yes, we will make this the most smooth and perfect as we can get it for the audience and for the performers in an indoor environment, because it is possible to do that. When you're considering taking or making a work for the outdoors, I'm not saying that there is no commitment or there is, to make the performance an excellent experience. It's just that there are, the more reason you have about having flexibility. Sorry, the doorbell is ringing. There has to be room for flexibility in terms of how you are making the work. So from the word go, when you have a concept, you need to understand that you could be performing, for example, on different floorings. It could be grass, it could be gravel, it could be mud, it could be a rolled up dance floor on grass. It could be many, many different floorings. So how is that work going to sit? How is it going to work on those different formats? The audience may not be committal. So they may be passerbys, they may be family audiences or audience who just want to have a lovely time and roam around the festival and see what other acts are on. They are not necessarily committed to come and watch your performance. There are lots of helpers, lots of volunteers, lots of people in festival organizations who will try and do their absolute best to make your experience wonderful. At the same time, there is a lot of contending elements. There's sound bleeds of other acts. There are other acts happening quite close by, in close proximity. You don't have an exit and an entry point. There may not be any possibility of having wings. Your set particularly has to be weatherproof. So making sure that if you are bringing props into the outdoors, you are bringing set into the outdoors, they have to be strong, they have to be durable, they have to not kind of fly away with a little bit of a breeze. And also the performers. I find that we have great institutions creating wonderful dance artists, wonderful musicians, but they are not catered to work for the outdoors. So that's a conversation that I'm having anyway, quite higher up, with people who are training, with people who are creating the syllabus for training artists. But you should really inform your artists, if they have never done outdoor work, what does that mean? And the first and the easiest way to do that is actually start rehearsing or start making in the outdoors. And that's what I did with Mughal Miniatures. I had artists who were very passionate, very ambitious, very excited to perform in the outdoors, but had absolutely no clue. So what felt really comfortable, trying R&D, doing the research and the development in a controlled space, and then going out and then making the work in an outdoor space, was very different, completely different world. But because they were so passionate, and they are there to really share their art, like myself, they were very good at adapting and very good and quick to learn, okay, this is the environment we're working with. So I would say your creatives should have some knowledge. If you have a senior creative team, like your sound designer, we had a dramaturge, we had a puppet master puppet maker, Andrew Krim, who does all the puppetry for outdoors. So having a senior creative team with myself, understanding what outdoors means, is actually really helpful. So that might be something to consider. Ideally work with performers who understand. Otherwise, I feel it's also very important to give opportunity to artists who haven't done outdoors. So that would be basically how I would do it, is just get them into an outdoor space, whether it is sun, rain, wind. There should be windy conditions. You must rehearse in a windy condition, because that'll actually inform your process. It'll inform your design. It'll even inform your costumes, even how to have your hair. You cannot have loose hair outdoors. It may just, or unless you're going for a particular stylistic, aesthetic visual of that, but you have to think of those very detailed practicalities as well. So I would say it's be prepared for all the unpredictables, and make sure you have contingency plans when something goes wrong, to make it go right.
Thank you so much, Sonia. That's great. Is there anything you wanted to add, Ryan, to that?
Not really. I think that was pretty thorough. I was going to say more or less the same things. I'll just whiz through some thoughts. But yeah, the biggest thing is you can't control the environment, which Sonia said. A police car might go past during a sentimental, emotional part of your show with a siren blaring. Pigeons might land. A dog might get excited because you're juggling balls and want to run across the stage. I've had a dad trying to take pictures of his kid in the front row, edging more and more beyond the safety rope of my performance space. And you can't stop those things. So you kind of have to roll with them and work with them. Remember that only you know where the line is on safety, and to be calm and control those situations. Just detour away from your devised material to sit that dad back down, to watch the dog run across the stage and be like, okay, like you have to roll with these things in the outdoor arts. Also on rain and stuff like that. You might suddenly find that you need to sprint everything into the green room because you didn't bring a tarp to quickly cover your set. And then when you need to preset for your next bit and you've only got 15 minutes, so you need to get all the stuff back out. So think about these things. Was the question specifically about the application?
It was just generally thinking about that creative process as well as
thing,
yeah, no, that's really
I really agree with Sonia, which is even if you predominantly create the show indoors, it is so worthwhile, particularly if you're working with a small ensemble, to do a couple of days outdoors, or maybe do a dress run outdoors, because it is such a different thing when you've got the wind impacting things. Or remember that like the earth itself shifts over the day. I do this bit on balancing ladders. A huge part of my tech is having to take a spirit level and recheck the ladder stabilizers between every single set and show. It's not just set for the day. Remember, indoors you can spike things with electric tape. You often can't do that in the outdoors. The earth changes or whatever. So think about that. We use various props and things in our shows to actually be stage markers that you wouldn't realize are stage markers, but so that really is the biggest thing. And the other thing I would say for your performers is eye contact, because you can't deny that the audience are there. They're very much part of the show. It's an exchange between you and them. There's much less of a divide between spectator and spectacle in the outdoor arts. It's very human. It's right there. There's a very real relationship there. And I think often stage performers can get used to doing the stage performers glaze, where they're sort of performing over their heads with some lights and they can't see the audience. So often when I'm directing an outdoor show, we go outside and I run around to different places in the audience to get them to look me in the eye. That's it, really. But I think Sonia covered everything pretty thoroughly. So
that's great. Thank you. We're getting a masterclass on how to turn from indoors to outdoors. Brilliant. Thank you so much. There's a couple more questions coming in. So Jackie is asking, would you support a show that is an extract or adaptation of a longer, new, full-length indoor show? So I'll start with that one, and then I'll hand over to you, Clive and Parmjit. So our priority really is the development of ambitious new outdoor work, so not necessarily to support revivals of existing work, really. But Clive and Parmjit, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm going to also hark back to, it's lovely listening to our two creators about making work outdoors and the problems. And one of the things it points to, it's a different thing. It's a totally different medium that you're going on. This is why I sort of like hark back to talking about people like Welfare State and people that did street arts, and also there's a book out there called Engineers of the Imagination that give you a bit of tips for building stuff outdoors, etc. One of the things you've got to realise if you're taking an indoor piece of work outdoors is the difference of the medium. Is your audience outdoors is not captive. Indoors, they're captive. They're not going anywhere. Once they sit down, they're going to watch your show or be embarrassed by getting up and going away. Outdoors, you don't have that. Like if you don't grab that audience and all the things that Ryan was saying about eye contact and all the things that Sonia was saying about that learning that performance stuff, if you don't grab your audience, that audience will walk away. So if you're taking a piece of work from outdoors to indoors, first thing you've got to think about is why are you doing it? You know, is it to reach new audiences? Will the work really well outdoors? Has it got things like circus stuff that work outdoors and things like juggling stuff that will transmit? Also, will the story work outdoors? And you do not forget the dramaturgy of what you're trying to do indoors and outdoors, because the storytelling is just as important outdoors as it is indoors, and that's how you're going to keep your audience. Also, I would remember things like lights and stuff. You don't get them. You don't have all the tech and all the joys of things like lightings, etc., unless you've got a late night show. And if you think about a lot of without walls shows, we don't really do most of the shows out late at night. Some of the early festivals have late night. Some of the stuff that's in September has it, but June and July they're very long, bright days as well. So I would remember that, and remember that it's not an easier option. You know, and it's not an easier option to take work outdoors. You know, do you need a huge set? And if you need the set, can it be transported well? And Sonia will talk about the mobile miniature sets and and the things you can get on site. And also, and one of the things I'll say with Ryan and stuff as well. Do people actually want it there? And we've got to think about the neighbours and whether your show is suitable to be in a public space. That even though it might not be for a particular age and audience, you've got to think that the show is going to be in a public space, and will it make that transition? So there are a few things to think about, but really the first question is why are you doing it?
Thank you, Clive. Yeah, definitely thinking about why is that project needing to be outdoors is one that we definitely ask ourselves when we look at those proposals. So yeah, want to add in the mix. Thank you. And yeah, Clive.
Also, length as well. We haven't mentioned about the length of the show. Your indoor show might be an hour and a half, and that won't work outdoors. And we're usually working on 30 to 45 minutes length of shows. So.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. That's really all very useful. Thank you. So another question that we've had on kind of adaptations of indoor work is, if you're radically adapting a show that has been made for indoors, can you apply to the creation support in order to R&D the process? And just one thing to pick up on that question just to start it is, the creation support, the creation and touring support isn't specifically for R&Ding ideas. It is very much for the creation of a tour. So it's very focused on having that kind of end product, for lack of a better word. So the R&D, if you want to R&D something and you're not sure of what the outcome might be, then that's something that you should apply to Blueprint with instead of the creation and touring support. That's that one. So there's a couple more questions coming in. One is from Joshua saying, the creation space said they would support my project, but can't discuss dates until August. How should I reflect this in my application? I assume it's best to have as many set dates in the application as possible. So I think we absolutely understand that you won't have all the answers by the time that you put in your application. I'm sure that Ryan and Sonia, you also had some unknowns in your applications when you put them in. But what we do ask is for you to tell us where you're at in those conversations. So both financially, in terms of whether they're providing in-kind support or whether you have some resources yourself to put towards that, the kind of financing of the project, but also in terms of the plans. So we understand there will be things that are confirmed or unconfirmed. And once we've done the shortlisting, we might be getting in touch with some artists to clarify some more bits of information a bit further down the line. So it's okay for you to state that you are in conversations and that it is unconfirmed. If it doesn't affect your budget, then I would keep it in as either in-kind support or cash support, however the agreement is being done, and just add a line next to it that says unconfirmed. And if you have a timeline by when it will be confirmed, then just add that detail in as well. Is there anything else on that, Parmjit or Clive or Ryan or Sonia, that you want to add?
Yeah, just very quickly on that. I was going to say the same thing. Typically, people get it and they understand that everything is like completely set in stone and that these elements that move around. I also run a space, so we're quite used to this sort of like needing to hear back from the funding in order to, but we pencil these things in and we try to be decent too. We'll, get in touch if there's a clash of dates and like try and work around it. But the only thing you can really do is flag up anything in your application that looks a bit not sketchy, but like it's a pencil or it could change. And if you can, try to allocate a very, very small contingency pot, taking into those things into account. Something we say to people that want to use our space, because we have a very comparatively cheap space to hire, but often can't afford to do free space, is that they pencil in these dates, but they don't tell us. And then if they get their funding and they suddenly say, oh, can we do this 2 weeks? Well, we don't have it available, but then they don't have the money in their budget to find space elsewhere. So if you've got 2 weeks of support in August and they can't quite yet confirm it, I would say just write something into like a 5% contingency when you're doing your budget to help combat those sorts of things.
Thank you. That's good. Thanks so much. We have a question here from Caroline, which is, can I have a small number of audience at a time? So for intimate yet powerful experience like theatre for no more than 5. Parmjit, do you want to feed a little bit of thoughts into that one?
So when I curate and program the festival, we're looking for a variety of different, well, I am certainly looking for a variety of different things going on. So some things might be for big audiences, some things might be moving and traveling and bringing audiences along with them. Other things might be more intimate. So just because it's outdoors doesn't mean that it can't be an intimate experience. And I'm certainly interested in programming a variety of things going on. So I wouldn't completely discount it. I've just done a project in Brighton with my own practice, which was 20 people at a time for 2 hours on a walking experience. And that was programmed very carefully with Brighton Festival to make that happen. And we looked at our timings very carefully to make that happen as well. And it worked really well. So don't completely discount it. I think there is room for intimate experiences within festivals, as long as there's a really clear reason about why that's a decision that you're making and what will that intimacy add to the audience's experience of what you're producing, what you're making.
Yeah, there's a bit of a follow-up question there, kind of related to it, from Ali, which says the project we're working on takes place on a residential street, but can happen multiple times. So would have a specific audience and adjoining audience potentially. Are you looking more for something that is for larger festival audiences? That's what I'm hearing so far. That's probably one for the specific festivals, but just hoping that doesn't exclude it. So again, on that kind of question of audience numbers and audience size and scale, we definitely do look for a breadth of scales in the program when we curate it. And so when we look at all of the proposals and we do the shortlisting, we do look at making sure that there's a variety of kind of scales. So intimate, larger scale, it really depends on what comes in every year, but we do kind of look at that and don't discount projects just because they are catered for smaller audiences or audiences that might interact with the piece in a slightly different way. Like you're saying there, Ali, we totally understand that that might be a part of the creative process. I think one thing to bear in mind with kind of community engagement, and Clive and Parmjit, please come in whenever you want to, is that you can't necessarily assume that the festivals might have the resource year round to do, depending what types of kind of community engagement. So a lot of the festivals in the network have a kind of small structure that sustains the organization through the year, and they only have sort of temporary staff that joins in the lead up to the festival. So for some projects that have kind of community engagement at the heart of them and that need sort of months of lead up to the piece, that's sometimes not an easy thing for us to accommodate just because of the nature and the variety of the festivals in our network. But I think if you are considering something that is engaging with audiences in a slightly different way, then by all means do make sure that you're telling us exactly how you're planning on doing that, who's going to be doing it, kind of what the rest of the implications are. Parmjit or Clive, do you want to come in on that? Yeah, Clive.
Yeah, it's also, don't assume that everybody's got residential streets. You've got to make a piece that's going to work in different spaces. And again, as it helps at least to get a bit of an idea of where festivals are putting stuff up. I'm not saying we couldn't find the things, but it's not on our usual footprint. So you need to sort of know that it's doable on the other festival sites. And then the whole thing about engagement, we currently don't have an all year round engagement person. So you need to factor in the capacity within your application to do some engagement and reach those local audiences. And if you've done that, you've got a lot more of a thing of being on the front foot about it as well.
Yeah. Great. There's a little question here that's also to do with kind of the specificity of the different festivals. So someone's asking how much green space is available and is being used for shows and in festivals. Parmjit, you have the perfect example this year with where your program is placed. Do you want to get back to that one?
Yeah, it's so our festival is happening across the outdoor program is happening across 2 different spaces, and some of the work will travel from one space to another. So on the Saturday of our festival weekend, we're in the Leicester's Botanic Gardens. It's the first time we've used that site, so it's really brand new for us. And that is, it's a conservation area, it's a green space, which comes with a lot of being mindfulness around the space you're in and the sort of work that you can put into that space in terms of structures, things that might impact upon the environment, so on and so on and so on. So those are things if I was in programming work for that site, I've had to be super careful around all of that. And then some of that program is going into Jubilee Square, which is Leicester city centre. It's park grass, but the grass is very worn, I would say, and a lot of concrete. So it's a mixture of surfaces, very different space. And like I said, there's one show that has to be adapted to be more static for that reason, because there's not many opportunities for promenade work in that area in the way that this particular piece needs it to be. So, and things like sight lines and all sorts of things are different from space to space, and the surfaces are different. And I've had to go back onto site several times with Botanic Gardens to look at how the trees are growing, and having to relocate work just a little bit because the trees have grown loads, and you know, the height under the space you have under trees or around trees is differing as well. So it comes with complications, and you have to think very carefully about your impact on the environment when you're working in green spaces, but it is possible to do it. It is possible to do it. We're lucky we have access to that. Not all festivals will have access to green spaces. Yeah.
Thank you, Parmjit. That's really great to hear. We don't have any more questions at the moment. So I was going to ask the artists, how do you lift your kind of creative idea and put it into writing? How do you make that kind of, do you have any tips on how to make that as authentic as possible and relatable? And how do you translate your creative idea into something that might feel a little bit dry, like an application? So that's one question for you. And then I'll ask Parmjit and Clive about what you're looking for when you're looking at applications.
I'm going to nominate Ryan first.
Thank you, Sonia. How to get your creative idea into writing? Was that for applications?
Yeah, or how do you make your kind of creative idea come across authentically or aligned with what you're doing? Is there anything that you think is useful to use? Any images, for example, or any way that you describe your work?
Sure. I'm a bit of an essay writer is my approach. So I've got lots of boring responses to that. The first thing you should definitely do is read whatever guidance is available, whether you fund you're applying to. The Arts Council obviously have huge PDFs on guidance and their questions, and Without Walls have guidance on what you're getting into, and don't ignore it. You should sort of plan around, you know, they give you the cheat sheet of what they're looking for. They tell you what they want and what's going on. You should look at it. And then don't just try and crowbar your idea on top. It kind of ties in with what Clive and Sonia were saying about, like, you can't just like plonk an indoor show outdoors, for example. You have to really think about it. In terms of writing it for the ideas, it's hard, isn't it? Because it's not just a boring essay, even though I said that. You've also got creatives and interesting people at the other end of this, looking at what you're reading. They're human beings, and they need to see what you see and visualize what you're saying. So you've got two jobs, really. You need to clearly and concisely articulate your idea. You don't need frivolous faff with your words, and you need to clearly illustrate and explain what you're going to do, like, how you're going to do it. But then you also need to paint the picture and sell the color and the celebration and the the joy behind what you're going to do. I tend to do that quite boringly by literally structuring my responses. I might have a paragraph on, like, here's the show, here's what it's going to be, it's about this, it's about me being caught between two worlds. That's what the ladders are about. It's a big metaphor, and the bomb's going to go off, and we're all going to. So I've got a bit on that, and then I tend to talk quite almost mathematically about how we're going to do it, almost in a bullet point. Bullet points are fine. They're easy to read. They're easy to digest. Like, yeah, it's quite a hard question to answer, I would say.
I think you've given some great pointers, Ryan.
You what, sorry?
I think you've given some great pointers there. Thank you.
I tend to my work partner always laughs at me because some people like to draw things on the back of napkins and make storyboards and pictures and all this sort of stuff. I just have an absolute madman's spider diagram of mind maps and things shooting off of things, and that's where I begin. And then I tend to begin after that with the budget, because as boring as the budget is, it's quite good to look at first, because it does actually spin a narrative. It lets you know, like, well, we can't buy, 17 suits of armor for this night show that we're making. That's insane. Like, and it can start impacting the design, how many performers are in the show, how long you have to make it. So as boring as it sounds, I'd start with read the guidance, make a big messy map, whether that's drawing or spider diagrams. Don't lose your artistic idea in all of that. Like, it's not a job call out that you're answering. You've got to have an idea and see if it fits. Does it, like, how do I make this fit? And then do the budget. That's my advice.
That's great, Ryan. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Sonia, I vividly remember the application because it had so many striking visuals for Mughal miniatures, and obviously it's a highly visual piece. But is that how you approach then applications like these, where you want to kind of convey that visual identity of the piece?
Absolutely. I think when you're working with a medium which is visual, and then you're having to break it down into words for an application, as Ruth St. Denis said, why would I talk about a piece if I can dance it? So I think it's trying to use that as a premise. Yes, if there is scope to talk about the work, but also add in visuals, maybe links to some of your research work. That's why I would really champion research before an application, because then you know what you're going to be developing. You know that you have a bank of ideas that can be sound bites as well. So sometimes we do send in links to sounds or music that we're working on or we're inspired by, because we're a dance and music organization. Or sometimes there might be a piece of writing or a quote. If we've had, I quite like to have costume designers in the process. If there's any kind of swatches that they've come up with, or mood boards, or preliminary designs, I will add all of that in. So it's trying to get the reader to understand what is driving the idea, what makes you excited, because if you are not excited by it, it is going to come across. And if you're merely putting in an application because you need to get the work out there, or you need to have something to happen as part of your portfolio, or you need to keep yourself busy, that is not the right reason to write an application. You need to have an idea that you are so passionate about. As I said, we were rejected for 5 years from other commissioners, but I had absolute sincere belief that this was going to be something that's going to pull off. And when we did the same thing. We had lots of visuals, but it has to connect with the reader. And I think one major thing is, how are the audience going to feel? What do you want the audience to take away? Is it going to be something that they're going to feel elated by? Or are they going to feel, is it a thought-provoking piece? Is it going to make them think? Is it going to question something around the world, or about them, or about other things? So it's making sure that you have the audience as your receptor. So what is it that excites you and you feel will excite the audience, or will take them on that journey? That is something, I think, if you can do that as part of an R&D process, you already have captured some of the audience feedback. So when we did our first R&D, we already had a sense of how the audience responded to some of the very, very most preliminary ideas. They weren't even, it was a research, so there were, you know, very kind of seed stages of the idea. But we got their feedback. We had Vox Pop. We got them to write some things down. We also got them to write questions about the piece, like how they saw the piece developing, or whether we would take direction A or direction B or direction C, which are great prompts for your next stage of development. We added all that into the application as well. And to be absolutely frank, be sincere. Don't make things up, and don't try and impress the reader with saying things that may not actually be part of your work. So that has to be very clear. Yeah, I've actually put down here as part of my notes, be absolutely practical. No assumptions, because anything can go wrong. Have contingencies, and actually put together a risk monitor plan. So, you know, if this was going to happen, then this is how we're going to mitigate it. I think being able to demonstrate that you are practical as well with a beautiful idea is, I think, is going to lead to a strong application.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you both for such great top tips. That's really brilliant. And just to add on the point of authenticity, I think that's absolutely right. We are definitely not looking for you to look at our artistic policy and say, well, this is what they want to see, I'm going to just make up a show that responds to all of those things. We definitely want to make sure that you're being authentic to your creative ideas. And within that, the way in which you write the application or you submit that through a video or an audio file needs to really come from you. So I know there's a lot of kind of use of AI these days in applications, and although you can absolutely use that for access reasons and to kind of help with some of that, we would definitely encourage you to keep that authenticity of your voice and your creative idea in your application, because that is kind of what comes through and what the artistic directorate will see and value most. We're nearly at the end, so just I don't know if you have a couple of top tips, Parmjit and Clive, about something that makes you kind of consider an application as being a strong application, or something that kind of lifts it off the page, something that artists wanting to apply might need to consider, just really briefly.
Yeah, I'll echo what everyone else has said in that. Just be really clear about your artistic intent, your idea, stay authentic to that. There may be a temptation when you read the priorities of Without Walls to try and warp your idea to meet those priorities, but don't feel like you have to hit all those priorities. Just really communicate what your idea is. And in terms of what excites me when I read proposals is, yeah, that clarity of artistic intention, and getting a strong feel for what the theme of a piece might be, what the storytelling, what the narrative might be, what questions you're hoping to provoke or feelings you're hoping to provoke with an audience. And I kind of get excited when there's that real kind of drive and passion in the writing as well. So if the writing feels passionate and excited about the idea, that pulls me in. And of course, I'm always looking for ideas that feel either innovative for the artist and the company themselves, in terms of, you know, going into new areas in terms of their own explorations, and being able to support them in that. And it's matching that ambition with reality as well, and some practicalities around touring. Things like making sure your work can translate into different spaces and only it isn't just for gardens or things like that. So there's the reality of things. So it's getting a blend of both.
That's great, Parmjit. Thank you. Any last words of advice, Clive, before I wrap up?
Yeah, go with your passion. Remember, it's not like project grants and stuff. It is for particular festivals. So feel free to talk to festivals. We you know, Certain Blacks, we put on diverse work. Our diverse work is across all the protected characteristics. But we also like putting weird stuff on, like we do live art. We work with people like Gorilla Circus we've supported. It is work that could be reached to our community and our audiences. But I think Sonia was touching on that, is work that sort of might reflect who we are, or be a dynamo for change of where we are, which we will be proud to put on, because we want to support your work and we really want to get it out there. So yeah, be passionate about what you're doing, and feel free to sort of maybe get in contact with the festivals before you go in, or check them out, and just be sure that you're not just going to a set of criteria, but you're applying to the people that want to put on your work, really.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And I think my colleague Grace is going to put in the chat a link to a program that we're running called Discover, which is all about exactly that, getting to know what it means to make work outdoors. It has a kind of festival visit as part of that program. So if any of you are interested in looking at that program, then please feel free to do so. So I'm just going to quickly remind you of the timeline. So the access support for the open call has been extended to next Tuesday, which is the 17th of June. So anybody who would like to kind of request access support to put in their applications, please email us before midday next Tuesday, or you can also call us. The deadline for all submissions is Tuesday, the 8th of July at midday. That's going to be a strict deadline. So for those of you looking at applying, please make sure you do so before the deadline. If you have any more questions, you can get in touch with us by email or by phone, no problem. The final decisions will be made at the end of October, and the first performances will take place in early May 2026. So thank you so much to everybody. Thank you, Ryan, Sonia, Parmjit, and Clive, for all your incredibly valuable insights. Thank you to our BSL interpreters and captioners, and to Grace for all her help, and to all of you for attending today. I hope it's been a useful webinar, and we look forward to finding out a bit more about all your projects very soon. So thank you all very much. Have a lovely afternoon.